Light too much.
All right, we are broadcasting now. So this is Armin Navabi from Atheist Republic, and you are?
My name is Asadullah Ali from Yaqeen Institute.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Well, what does, for example, what's Yakim Institute and what do you do there?
Yaqeen Institute is a recent institute headed by Sheikh Omar Soliman. We provide academic literature and research on topic of Islamic studies, including counterterrorism, Islamophobia, etc., etc. And we are being targeted by ISIS.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yay! But they're almost dead, so it's not too much of a problem, right?
Yeah, well, it's always good to be against ISIS, so you're doing something.
Yeah.
so, so um, all right, so against Islam, so you're educating people about Islam, or you're educating people mostly about Islamophobia, or like you're basically trying to, what is the goal? What is the main goal of your organization and you personally?
Well, the main goal of the organization is to intellectualize the Muslim community and subsequently the world around regarding Islam and issues related to Muslims in Islam in general. It's primarily a research institute.
Mm.
So what I do is that I primarily study what we call the Occident or Occidentology, Western ideas and thoughts, and how they influence, whether negatively or positively, the Muslim world. So I also study things like bigotry against Muslims, and right now I'm actually working on research related to the history of science in the Muslim world and how Muslims can become more scientifically productive in the
Mm.
contemporary period. So that's my current research project. But
And do you reach out to non-Muslims and try to educate them about Islam as well, or just Muslims?
yeah, I mean, it really depends on the topic in question. So, I mean, like for instance, regarding science, so we do reach out to many individuals kind of on the, what is it, with the Orientalist trends regarding how Muslims lost science. And, I discuss with a lot of academics and activists in respect to how Muslims can become more scientifically productive. Yeah.
And do you at all try to convert anybody to Islam?
I mean, dawah is one of the keys in some respect, but it's mostly just awareness and understanding. I
Hmm.
mean, my personal belief is that while I can preach a message or give a message, it's not up to me to guide anyone. I'm just giving information. So I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I don't go knocking on people's doors.
You know,
So,
when I was a Muslim, I used to think that that's the most important thing I could do to save somebody from hell.
yeah.
Because like if you see somebody being almost run over by a bus, right?
Mhm.
You will basically try to warn them and say like, hey, there's a bus is coming, right?
Yeah.
So, and I thought like all these Muslims are around and they believe in hell and they believe non-Muslims are going to go to hell. But when you ask them why are you not warning everybody, like, oh, it's not up to me, it's up to God. Like, yeah, but I thought like, but you could at least warn them about it. Like, are you not even going to try? Like that was, and that's why I also see when a Muslim is trying to preach Islam, a lot of atheists are like, oh, just keep your religion to yourself. But
Mhm.
I see there's like two different kinds of people that are trying to preach Islam to non-Muslims, right? Those that are just trying to win and prove that you're wrong and they're right and you're an idiot and they're smart. And then those people that actually just care, they just don't want you to burn, right? So for those second group of people that I don't really see why we should be against that. That's even if we disagree with that, that's coming from a position of concern and kindness. Um, I mean, everybody should be able to go out and promote their views. I just think that's not the correct view, but I don't understand why we should be against people that are trying to promote something that they believe is true. You know where I'm coming from?
Okay.
So with that logic, would you see that promote somebody that is also an atheist, right, or a Christian, when they are promoting atheism or Christianity, it could come from different positions. It could be either like, I'm superior to you because I got it right and you guys are just a bunch of idiots, or an actual position that you think that this is the truth, and knowing the truth is going to help you lead a better life. So I'm just trying to help out. I'm not forcing it on you, just like Muslims would not. Many Muslims are, I mean, unless you're living in Saudi Arabia or Iran, it's a Muslim is inviting you to Islam. It's not forcing Islam on you. Also, promotion of Christianity or atheism is also an invitation. Um, it's not forcing it on anybody. Do you know what I mean? So,
Okay.
do you see that? Like, do you see a promotion of atheism with that intention to be okay?
I see the promotion of anything to be okay, as long
Like,
as it's not harming
it's not
people.
harming anybody. So you will welcome that. You will welcome, and would you welcome it to a degree of like criticizing Islam, or even to the point of maybe even making jokes about it, or stuff like that? What's the red line for you that you don't have, that you think it's not okay?
There's a red line in the contemporary period because, I mean, there's where all nations or all countries are secular in nature, primarily at least.
And do you think that's a good model to live under?
No, I don't. But what can I do?
Well, you're doing your part to improve the world the way you see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have very different political opinions.
Like what? Tell us.
I'll get to that in a minute. But
Okay.
what I will say is that if we're getting into the whole issue of spreading one's ideology, I mean, I have no problem in any context. I mean, if we're going to talk about specifically the apostasy laws in Islam, we can get into that. But I have a very specific opinion about that, more in line with Professor Jonathan Brown. So, I mean, yeah, today and in the conditions that we live in, the political and the sort of global conditions we live in, obviously, spread it around as you want. We don't live in a time of empire or where citizenship is determined by religiosity anymore. So it's like the context of apostasy laws don't apply. But, I can't really disagree with it.
Right. So, what was the context of apostasy laws that it did make that okay?
Well, during that time, particularly, and this is not based on any sort of timeline. I mean, if the conditions change today, obviously it would apply as well. But I mean, back then, for instance, primarily citizenship was based on religiosity or whatever particular empire you were a part of. And in time of empire, which basically just ended within the 20th century, people who left a particular religious group were also leaving a particular polity and going to another side. And if you know anything about empire, and I'm pretty sure you do, empire does not mean there was like a nation state where people just kind of relaxed, did what they wanted, had their own little borders, didn't bother anybody around them. Everyone was trying to get territory from somebody else. So everyone was constantly at war with one another. So if you left a particular community, that was basically treason because you're going to the other side who is fighting you. So it's like, it was more rational back then. Today, we don't have that situation. We don't have those conditions. So
under what conditions that would be okay again?
If those conditions were to return, if we had a time of empire, for instance, where everyone else was kind of vying for power and territory and your citizenship was based primarily on your ideology or religious position. But today, that's not the case. I mean, all nations are secular nation states.
So and then the death penalty would be okay for that in that situation?
Well, considering that it implies treason back then, yeah, I would say so. I mean, that was pretty rational.
But do you think treason, even right now, do you think treason would be okay the death penalty is okay for treason in any form?
Well, yeah, I mean, even in the United States, we have it.
But that doesn't, I mean, United States is not the role model for how to...
That's not a role model for certain things, but I mean, if your actions harm society, legitimately speaking, like say if you release private information to an enemy state like Russia, that would probably be constituted as treason and you'd probably be executed for that.
But okay, so if you're saying like, okay, your religion, your ideology is kind of like your citizenship, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't denouncing your religion be more like giving away in today's world, wouldn't it be more like giving away your citizenship, not necessarily treason? You know what I mean? Like, for example, if I'm a Canadian, I could be like, I'm denouncing my Canadian citizenship. That wouldn't that
Yeah.
be? It wouldn't be like I'm committing
Well, no.
treason against Canada. It would be more like I'm no longer Canadian. And I don't think in the United States, if you renounce your citizenship in the United States or any country, I don't think there's a death penalty or any punishment for that.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because we no longer live in a time of empire, so it doesn't really matter.
But do you think, right? So do you think there are some things? Well, I mean, as atheists, we get accused of being relativists when it comes to morality, and we saying like, oh, something is okay at one time and not okay at another time. But then this seems like an example where people that say God is a source of morality, so things morality is not conditional, and it's based on principles that God offers. It seems like then you have believers all of a sudden saying, like, this is okay here and that's okay there. Like, you know what I mean? Isn't it something that is wrong, always wrong?
Yeah, I mean, but we're not talking about moral relativism. Moral relativism suggests that every different moral application or different sort of moral standard is valid in all times and places. And this is not what we're saying, or at least what I'm saying. The type of morality that I'm advancing here is that morality is static throughout time. So, for instance, murder is always wrong. Stealing is always wrong. Doing certain things are always wrong. However, the conditions by which those are applied and understood change. So, for example, if I may, there was a recent case here in the United States. I forgot what state it was, but there was a young lady who had convinced her boyfriend to commit suicide via text. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah.
She got sentenced to prison, but she's currently on appeal. I hope she goes to jail. Anyways.
Me too.
Now, when we understand why this became a homicide case, so she was being convicted for murder. Okay. However, the way in which she committed this murder, as we understand it, was through text messaging, through her phone at a distance. Now, 1,400 years ago, they didn't have phones. They didn't have text messaging. Okay, so the conditions by which we determine what a homicide was have changed based on certain circumstances and technology, etc. However, murder is still murder. See?
Yeah, I mean, the intention is what matters. If even back then you didn't have a phone, but if you managed to convince your boyfriend with a letter that you tied to the foot of a bird and you sent it over there, and then you convinced him to commit suicide, I think that would have been equally as bad. I think it doesn't really matter how you do it. If you convince somebody to kill themselves just because you want to, I don't know what her motivations were, but it's just as bad then as it's bad right now, right? It's just if you kill people for changing their opinion on something, right? I mean, if, for example, if somebody in a Christian nation all of a sudden became a Muslim even back then, and they killed him for it, today I would look at that and I would say that was a crime, right?
Why is that?
Well, maybe not a crime. That was a bad, wrong thing to do. Okay, crime might be a legal term, right?
But if it was implied though that by changing one's faith that you would be joining an enemy state, would you consider that to be immoral?
Yeah, because when somebody because in the eyes of the Muslims and in the eyes of the Christian, right, they are not betraying anybody. They just found the truth, right? They're not like, oh, I'm going to join the other team. That's not what's going in their head. In their head is like, this seems unreasonable and this seems reasonable. And, oh, I figured out that Jesus was our Lord and Savior. Or, oh, I figured out that there is no God and this is all bullshit. I figured out that, God, Mohammed was the last prophet. I changed my opinion. This was the intention. The understanding was not like I'm going to betray my empire or something. It's just I just changed my opinion about something. And for punishing somebody for that, especially as fallible humans that we are, and that you could be wrong about your views, I could be wrong about my views, to hold people responsible for just having an opinion that is that they consider wrong. That I think that's always wrong. Just like,
I think that we're thinking a bit anachronistically here, because I think people back then would have thought in the same way that I am determining. I mean, because today we have a very interesting concept where we separate our ideas from the polities or the places in which we live. There seems to be sort of a distance between the two. However, back then, not so much. It was more holistic in the sense that your ideology also determined your political, allegiances in a very strong way, and especially in the context where states were, or we can't call them states actually, that's also anachronistic, but where polities were at war with each other constantly. That was a little bit more. That situation was not the same as we have today. I mean, the kind of what you're describing is that somebody just kind of sat around, changed their mind, and now they're being killed for no reason. But we live in a context in which that occurs all the time, because there is no situation where that would imply.
If you read the people that did change their mind, or if you read the invitations that people used to change their mind, was not like, hey, people of Rome, betray your country, and come join the Ottoman Empire, which is the only true empire. That was not not the invitation, right? So the message was like, no, Jesus was not God. Jesus was the prophet. Mohammed was the last prophet of God, right? And this was even then the missionaries, or the people that were trying to do dua and stuff. That was, and also in Iran, within Iran, for example, which is an Islamic country, you had minorities. Then you had Jewish minorities, you had Christian minorities, you had Zoroastrian minorities, and they considered themselves Iranian. They didn't consider themselves non-Iranian because they weren't Muslim, even though Iran was an Islamic country. And
Iran's a modern state.
The Persian Empire, right? They consider themselves under the rule of this government, right? Of this kingdom.
Even the concept, of Iranian, that's very modern. I
understand the whole nation state was, that was a new invention. But for example, what I'm saying is that the Christians that lived in the Persian Empire, they weren't considered as part of the other team, right? They weren't considered people that were spies for the Romans, right? They were just considered citizens of they had to pay their share of taxes and everything to this empire, to this Persian Empire, even though it was during the Safavid, it was a Shia empire, and this was before nation state. They still lived, they wouldn't be considered committing treason until they actually went and committed treason. If for example, the Roman Empire came and talked to Christians and hired spies from within them, and they proved that, okay, now we found out that in our Christian community we have some spies, they would capture them and execute them, right? But they wouldn't go after them just because they were Christian. In fact, they were allowed to buy and sell wine, even though Muslims in Iran were not allowed to do that, right? In fact, there was a big problem with Muslim Iranians that would secretly go and try to buy Christian wine from the Christians, right? So, but they were allowed to do it because the religion didn't apply to it, which is actually way more progressive than Iran is right now. But
I'm talking about the time of the Shah.
No, I'm talking about like Safavid era.
Safavid era. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, for instance, let me give you just one historical example of the Roman treatment of early Christians is that they consider them atheist. The term atheist was a little bit more specific back then to simply mean anti-pagan. But upon understanding that these people were becoming Christians, they became extremely alarmed and started persecuting them because they assumed Christianity was a form of Judaism. And back then, the Jewish people were constantly rebelling against the Roman Empire. So this simple change of faith was implied even during the early Roman Empire prior to Islam, that this was.
I think it wasn't a whole blanket situation for every empire before we all of a sudden defined nations and stuff. I think it really depends on like we're talking about thousands of years, right? And
Mhm.
many different locations. I think
Yeah.
it's really geographic and time specific, right? So I do think that this whole blanket rule of killing people because they were, I mean, because they changed their opinions, because that would be treason. I think that's a lot of jumps there. You know what I mean? But let me go to the topic that I wanted to bring up
Okay, sorry. I
today,
guess we're
because
digressing.
yeah, but actually what we talked about is a good example of me and you talking about something that we disagree on without me attacking you personally or you
Yeah.
attacking me personally, right?
Mhm.
And why do you think we don't see that much? Like, why do you think that? Here's the thing. In your opinion, I think atheism is ridiculous, isn't it?
Sorry, I don't want to be that harsh, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I don't. Here's the thing, though. I don't see that as you personally attacking me, because that should not be considered harsh.
No,
Because
hyperbole. Very
no,
hyperbole.
because no, okay, it's not really hyperbole, because in most as Muslims view, it's ridiculous to think that this world with all this, you know, with all the design and all these pattern and all these rules and stuff could just come out of like nothing. This is what like. It's not hyperbole. It's actually a ridiculous idea for Muslim. But I'm just saying, you saying atheism is ridiculous and even making fun of it should not, by me, be considered you personally attacking me just because I believe in that idea. Do you know what I mean? So I think in the same way, if I say Islam is ridiculous, I should be able to have Muslim friends that don't feel personally attacked, not saying like you are ridiculous, you are an idiot. I think a lot of Muslims should be able to. We should be able to make fun of each other's ideas without and learning not to take that personally. And I think the reason why that's important is because the people that are fighting each other personally right now are winning. They are you have the alt-right and you have these jihadists, and they're stealing all the attention, and people in the middle that could have reasonable civil discussions with each other are losing it to them. And I think people in the middle that could have civil discussions with each other should unite and demonstrate to people that it's possible to have civil discussions, and basically take away the fuel that from these extreme groups. You know why? Because they try to convince me and you and others that disagreements are a cause for hatred. And if we show that we could disagree and not hate each other, we're basically stealing their resources from them, right? Because we should look, your rallying cry is that these people are different, and that's why we should attack them. But we're showing that we're different, and we're not attacking each other, even though we're not holding back on our disagreements, right? Because some people try to bring people together by saying like, no, look, we agree with each other, we agree with this, our disagreements are not that much. But that's bullshit, in my opinion, because if you try to sell that idea, but you're also selling the idea that then therefore disagreements are a cause for hatred.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is a bunch of postmodern nonsense.
All right, but what do you think? What do you think? How could atheists come? How could we criticize Islam, even to the point of mockery, without being in the same group as people that are anti-Muslim bigots?
Okay. It's a very open question, very big question, actually, because that's all I can say about that. Well, first off, I think that a lot of people do. I think there is some sensitivity, obviously, on one side, and actually both sides. But at the same time, I do think that sometimes there is a misunderstanding of what constitutes as criticism versus just blatant hostility. Like, there are a lot of people, for instance, who are anti-Muslim bigots, who are using the whole like, well, we're just criticizing Islam card. And we do need to be able to differentiate between that. I mean, there's one thing to say, well, I think Islam teaches certain moral principles that are wrong, And then there's another thing to say that Muslims follow pedophilia or want to be pedophiles, or or by and large, doing certain things like this.
Right.
There is a people cannot seem to differentiate between the two, and that's a problem. And that's not to say it's also not happening on the other end. I mean, there are Muslims who do likewise to other people.
Right.
And I think this is a large trend in general in the world. And I think I told you in text earlier, and I'm sorry if I sound quite arrogant in this respect, but I think that the majority of the world population is made up of people who, for lack of better terms, are intellectual peasants. They think themselves very intelligent, because they read Twitter every day. And then they go around spreading their opinions and they don't even bother to actually learn about the subject they're talking about. And I think this sort of pseudo-intellectualism, lack of education in the world, is a general problem, not just with Muslims, but even atheists.
The thing with that is, though, that I agree with you, but I don't blame them, because I think intelligence and education is a luxury that few people have because of the environment that they grew up in, or maybe even genetics, or maybe even their parents valuing education and reading and books, or I don't know, whatever. But I do think that I think many atheists also are always saying, why can't people just wisen up? And I'm telling them, what I say, like, if you're waiting for that, you're going to be waiting for a very long time. That's just not going to happen. But the thing is that we need to make this world a better place in a way that is not conditional on people wisening up, because if that's the condition, it's never going to happen.
I mean, I agree with you there, and I think that that was unfair, probably in my initial comment, because I think that you are correct in many respects. I mean, for instance, I know I have a lot of friends from Bangladesh, and it's very unfortunate how the majority of people there are so poor. I mean, they're so languishing, and I mean, they're just completely burdened by poverty, and it's horribly upsetting, how they have to struggle so much while their prime minister and everyone else in the upper echelons are making so much money off of doing nothing. And in many respects, I want to correct myself and say, okay, for individuals who are kind of forced to be in a situation where they don't have access to education, they don't have access to information, then okay, yeah, we should be a little bit nicer to them, saying for them to wise up when they're more concerned about finding food. It's not exactly fair because they don't have the luxury of doing that. I think I'm probably more like attacking people who frequent the internet constantly because they have the luxury of doing so. People that we sort of normally communicate.
Yeah, but even they, for you, even if information is right in front of you and it's on your fingertips and you can get it, you might not have been born in an environment that values, or first of all, don't understand how to distinguish between good information and bad information.
Yes.
Or people that or value evidence or value research, or might never, for example, maybe if you went to school, it's easier for you to basically look for information and do research, but it might be very exhausting for somebody that has never even tried that before, right?
Yeah.
And some people don't even know how to know one source is credible and one source is not, right? Mm-hmm. So even in the age of information, when information is so readily available, it is for a lot of people challenging to use that, and that's why I think that one thing that I try to rely on is maybe sense of kindness more than intelligence, because I do think intelligence is not very common, but kindness is more common, right? And I think appealing to that might have better results than appealing to people's sense of logic.
I think that, yeah, I agree with you that mannerisms etiquette is necessary. I will be a little bit disagreeing in certain respects. I mean, like, for instance, if you're dealing with just outright trolls, sometimes being harsh is the best medicine. But I mean, most of the time, most people who are just looking for answers, people who are just minding their own business, doing, just living their life, of course, approaching them with kindness and respect is probably the best method.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you that people don't seem to understand the difference between ideas and people, right? But but um, I want to make it clear that just because you don't want to attack a group of people, first of all, if one certain individual deserves to be attacked, like, I don't know, Trump, for example, I don't
I feel bad for him now, to be honest. He gets tactic all the time. So.
But I don't see that as an issue if you want to target one specific person that, like, for example, in my opinion, like Linda Sarsour or Trump or, I don't know, Stalin, right? But to say something about groups of people, that's always you're always making a mistake, because there's no way to group people and make a blanket statement about them, right? But this is something that people just don't get. But just because, and also just because I defend groups of people, a lot of people misunderstand that I'm also defending their ideas, right? But I don't hold back on attacking Islam, even though I also don't hold back on trying to defend Muslims' rights, right? I think you could go max on, I'm passionate about the views that you have, and attack the ideas that you find that are harmful, and that should not at all contradict your support for your fellow human beings and their rights. And I don't expect anything less from people that I disagree with. Like, I don't think a lot of people say, like, I like Muslims, but as long as they're not preaching. And, like, why? Why? Because why shouldn't they be able to preach? That's not the problem I have with Islam. The problem I have with Islam is that I disagree with its premises and its conclusions, right? The preaching is not the problem with Islam, because that's what they hold, that's what they see as true. In fact, they should fight for their view more passionately than I am, because the consequences of my worldview is limited to one lifetime, and the consequences of their worldview is not limited at all. It's eternal, right? So if I was a Muslim, I would be even a stronger activist than I am right now. But so I just think that I don't see why people can't see the difference. But would you see? Are you able to befriend an atheist that fights Islam with passion and with everything, with a lot of, doesn't hold back on fighting Islam, right? But is open to be friends with Muslims at the same time? Are you able to befriend somebody like that?
I have no problem, to be frank with you. I don't have a problem being cordial or respectful to an individual who disagrees with my religion. But if, I'm going to be frank with you as well here in this respect, that, if you have a particular idea that you live by, okay? So, for example, like, I respect the Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I have a quote-unquote friend who is constantly calling him bad names. Of course, I'm going to take that a little bit personally, and it's going to be difficult for me to go out and, get a hot dog with this guy. I can't get a hot dog anyway, but that's besides the point. But you know what I mean? Like, I can still sit there and, like, okay, let's have a debate.
Yeah.
I'll be on this side, we'll be on this side, we'll speak cordially to each other. But it's not easy to, I mean, for anyone. I don't think anybody who really takes their beliefs or their way of life seriously can sit there and have a friend sit there and just start bashing it all day long. You know what I mean? Like,
but
it's like, hey.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know. I think it's possible if you don't. Here's the thing: the bashing should not be there if somebody doesn't want to be exposed to it. Because here's the thing: for example, let's say you are bashing Islam on your own website and on your book and your
business,
right? Yeah. So on your own you're not. But so any Muslim that is seeing that, either doesn't know how to use social media or is willingly exposing herself or himself to it, right? So you're not shoving it in their face. They're just coming and seeing it, right? So I think you have a right to free speech, but we don't have a right to an audience. We can't demand an audience, right?
Exactly.
So So if you are my friend and I say like, hey, let's talk about this, and you be like, let's not, right? I should not. I should stop talking about it,
Yeah,
right?
it's like
Because
if we go see Star Wars, I don't expect you to start talking about ISIS. It's like, come on,
right,
dude. I don't watch
right,
Star Wars. I don't care about.
right. So I think if as an atheist I start bashing Muhammad in front of you, even though you didn't ask for it, I think that's a shitty thing to do, and I'm an asshole for doing that, right? But so, but if you say like, okay, bring it on. What's your problem with Prophet Muhammad, right?
Mhm.
If you give the green light, then I think it's not an asshole thing to do.
Well, yeah,
To be
we're having
like,
a discussion,
yes,
but and of course, there's supposed to be some cordiality between us. I'm not going to sit here and say that atheists eat babies, and that and you got and do all these horrible, immoral
we
things.
do actually.
Oh, that's horrible. I had one time, and I couldn't go back.
This, it's yeah, but no. So, but I think we could go further than just being respectful. I think we could actually even be friends because, like, okay, so for example, economists, right?
Mhm.
They, you have capitalist economists and you have socialist economists, right? I think they're friends with each other. Like I think on the street level, the capitalists and the socialists are like fighting at each other, and you guys are idiot. You got the socialists call the capitalists people that just want they don't care about the poor and just want everybody to get richer, and the capitalists call the socialist people that just want they're lazy. They just want the system to pay them. That's the underground. But the economists themselves, I think they're not going to be like not going to like have a tea with each other because that one is a socialist economist, or I think they are able to even be very close and friends with each other. I just think why can't we have the same thing, with religion or even with on the street level? Why can't we have the same thing with other ideologies as well, right? I mean,
Well,
it's harder with Islam, though. I kind of agree with you a little bit because for many Muslims, Islam is part of their identity, right? Atheism is not. It's just one of the many things I don't believe in, and views I have. It's not really part of my identity. So attacking it doesn't seem like attacking me personally, but I do see why Islam, for a lot of people, is part of their identity.
I mean, look, I'm not going to disagree entirely, but what I will say is this: once again, that nothing will stop me from being respectful and cordial with individuals who I disagree with. At the same time, though, like we have to be realistic in some ways and say that okay, well, somebody who actually takes their beliefs seriously, like you mentioned the economist, if they're calling each other vipers and telling each other that they're horrible people and then going out for tea the next day, I don't take their beliefs seriously because they probably don't believe them if they actually are saying one thing on one hand and on the other hand they're going around going bowling together or something. It's like that doesn't make any sense. It's like they're being two-faced. In some way, if I know an atheist, for instance, who goes around and says Muslims are stupid or this, and then he expects his Muslim friend to be cordial with him the next day, I think that there is a two-faced thing going on there, or that person, the Muslim guy, is stupid for going out with that person. I mean, there's a level where it's rhetoric only, and then you actually believe something. And if you actually believe something, then at some point, you can still be respectful and tolerant of other individuals, but to say like, oh, let's go to Christmas parties together and give each other fruitcake. I mean, it's just not, and it doesn't have to happen. I'm going to be frank with you. It doesn't have to happen.
No, I don't think it has. I'm not saying it has to happen, but I'm suggesting that it could happen, right? Because what I'm saying is that I might be a Marxist and somebody could be a capitalist, and we might really both enjoy Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why can't we I might, and then he all of a sudden starts talking about the last episode. Am I gonna? And I really want to get my opinion in there. I'm really enjoying his opinion on it. Am I gonna stop? Am I not gonna say something because he's a capitalist pig, right?
So the question, capitalist pig. That's good, but capitalist pig dogs. No, I mean, of course, within the context of that discussion. But then, you guys, if you actually believe, if the capitalist is actually very strict on their capitalism, and the Marxist is very, he hates capitalists. And to expect these people to be like long-term, sharing secrets with each other and stuff like this, I mean, it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? It's
it will if you start sharing, if you see other aspects of them, You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Like
yeah,
maybe this Marxist guy, he's not just a Marxist, right?
yeah,
Maybe he's also like, maybe he does does salsa and get like right, and
interesting.
then like, yeah, or maybe watch Game of Thrones. There's so many other things about it, because if we are gonna only be friends with people that we agree with, then we're gonna be very alone, and you know, and
Yeah,
and I think, you know, and I think the best way to, because and again, like you brought it up, a lot of people are not very intelligent, you know, which is
I
fine.
feel bad saying that now, but
No, no,
still,
it's true. And here's the thing: I don't hold that against them. Okay,
yeah,
you know, but the thing is that I think the best way to sell this idea is to do what we're doing right now, right? Instead of arguing with people, telling people like, oh, you could, you know, ideas and people are different. Yeah, you know, and people can't seem to get it, right? I think so because they can't seem to get it, the best way to do it is to demonstrate. And the way to demonstrate is that you go on full on against each other on atheism and Islam and Christianity and fight it out passionately, and then go out and have non-alcoholic drinks with each other after, right? And then when you show that to people, like, look, these people really disagree with each other, but they're also still friends. That more than any argument can demonstrate that it's possible, I think.
yeah,
Yeah. And here's the thing: I tell my Muslim friends that they should identify people that are attacking Islam and not attacking Muslims. In fact, they might even be trying to defend Muslims. They should find these people, and they should unite with them, because if we remove the people that are not attacking Muslims but are attacking Islam, if we remove them, then the only anti-Islam game in town is going to be the freaking bigots. You know, kind of how, you know, how this Trump phenomena is kind of like a response to the PC culture,
yeah,
right? And I think just if you shut people up, you're basically enabling the people that are, you know, that are on the extreme on every end, right?
yeah. You're just making people more frustrated.
Yeah. So if, for example, if you tell Muslims that they can't practice Islam, like Reza Shah did in Iran, you're gonna give birth to an Islamic revolution, right?
Yeah, you're going to make people very angry, and
Yeah.
because they're going to feel oppressed. They're going to feel more validated in their views.
Yes. And it's going to be the same thing on the atheist side. If you tell atheists that are not bigots, if you tell them that they can't criticize Islam, if they can't fight Islam, then you're going to have the alt-right, a new uprising of the alt-right, because that's the only game in town now. They are the only people, and for those majority people that you are saying that are not intelligent, they might want to have something to say about against Islam, because they're finding problems with it. But we could have been their role models. We could have been like, look, we're friends with them, but we're telling them why they're wrong, right? But now we're not there because you shut us up, and now they're joining. They are the only ideology that they might might be more interesting to them is people with the alt-right that are focusing on anybody. By the way, this anti-Muslim movement doesn't really care about what people believe in. So we are also like, they don't care that most of them, they don't really care if you're an ex-Muslim or you're a Muslim, right? We are in the same boat, because if you're Iranian and Pakistani or Saudi Arabian, a lot of times you are in the same boat as other people. But I do agree with you that there's a lot of bigots that do jump on the atheism or ex-Muslim bandwagon, right? And just like you try to identify, just not you as you, just like the Muslim community needs to, it goes into their community and finds that the problems that it might have within this community, it's our responsibility also to call out people within our community that seem to have a problem with Muslims, their problems with Islam is more than ideological. You know what I mean? I do agree that that's our responsibility, but I do find that a lot of Muslims can't tell the difference between us, right? Can't tell the difference between the people that are against Islam and people that are against Muslims.
Well, I think there's there's a lot to unpack there. I got three things I'd like to say. It's okay.
Okay, sorry, I talked too much.
No, that's okay. No, I do as well. The first thing is I think that one of the ways in which we can start to advocate more open dialogue and attempt to foster more intellectual jihad. I think you're aware of what I mean by that.
Can you say that again?
In order for us to both foster more intellectual jihad,
internal jihad.
Well, intellectual jihad.
Intellectual jihad.
So you're part of the secular jihadists, right? So
Yeah.
I'm part of the the Muslim jihadists, but in the intellectual arena. So in order to foster something like that more, we need to foster a society where dialogue and debate is welcome. And in many places in the world, that's not the case. So, for instance, one of the good things about the United States is that we do have a lot of platforms for open discussion and dialogue. Whereas in many places in Europe, it's not as easy. And even in Malaysia, where I was living for the past 7 years, even discussions between different political groups that may be considered Malay, I don't want to get into that whole situation, but I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
There's not much open discussion. Like they consider, there are many cultures around the world, even in the West, where it's considered to be too controversial to have these sort of things. And we need to start fostering that more openly so we don't have so many of these reactionary movements.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'd like to say, if I may, I'll be done in a minute, but one of the reasons that I think that Muslims may take certain things personally is, so for instance, you hear a lot of people who claim to criticize Islam who constantly insult the Prophet Muhammad, saying sort of derogatory things about him. Now, I'm not saying that you can't disagree, but one thing that many people may want to consider before approaching other Muslims trying to convince them otherwise of their views is that they need to realize that Muslims see the Prophet as an example. So like when you insult the Prophet indirectly, to many Muslims it sounds like, oh, you're insulting me because I'm trying to follow him as a moral example. So you're saying that, like, for instance, when people say the pedophile thing, stuff like that, it's like, okay, you may have that view, but if you're trying to approach a Muslim and you're gonna be like, hey, this is you're telling that person that they're trying to be a pedophile. It's like, that's not cool.
Yeah, well, okay, but if that's it, here's the point of, it depends on what your purpose is. If you are making fun of Muhammad just to piss people off, then you're a sadist, right? But if you are making fun of Muhammad because people are not, this is not the approach I take when I'm talking to a Muslim, right? If I go to a Muslim, I'm not going to be like, okay, let me convince you, your prophet was a pedophile, right? Like, that's not going to be my opening line, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you're not the case, but there are a lot of people who do that.
No, but I do think that when people are making fun of a prophet illegal or close to illegal, then the point, you're not going to say that to a Muslim when you're talking to, that's not the right approach when you're talking to a Muslim. But if you're going to ban drawing Muhammad, here's an example I give you, right? So a Muslim friend of mine asked me, like, look, what if I drew your mom and make fun of her? Wouldn't you be offended? I was like, yeah, that would disturb me, and if you just do that for no apparent reason, I would think you're an asshole, right? But if my mom was the queen, and the country passed a law that considering passing a law that you can't draw the queen, right? Then I would go and like, okay, everybody start drawing the queen, right? Because we need to make sure they can't get away with telling people what to draw and what not to draw, right? But maybe if I met her son, I wouldn't be like, hey, look at your mom, right? So not maybe for somebody that holds her dear, maybe I wouldn't be as stated because that wouldn't serve any purpose. But I would try to pass out flyers of your different drawings of your mom, which is the queen, and they're trying to pass a law against it, and people are telling me that it's shameful and you shouldn't do it. We would try to make that backfire as much as possible, so that the government never tries to. We try to make sure the government not to ever consider trying to limit our free speech again, because when you do that, it actually we do it 100 times more. So don't try to make anything saying anything illegal, because it will have the opposite effect of what you were looking for achieving, right? So this, yeah, so that would be the purpose of, for example, going and drawing Muhammad, right? But I would not. I would do this on our channels, right? On our atheist pages and websites. If a Muslim comes to me and says like, "Hey, tell me why you're an atheist," I'm not gonna be like, "Hey, look at this drawing of Muhammad."
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I'm very much for private property in accordance with even the Islamic tradition. You know, like if you're doing it on your private atheist page or whatever, you want to put whatever you want on it, that's your business.
Or in public property.
Well, yeah, public property in accordance, of course, whatever statute laws or whatever existed back then. Anyways, right. The point is, if you know, if that's not debatable as far as I'm concerned. Right. However, I mean, when we're talking about methodology, you know, like I said, as I pointed out earlier, you know, a lot of these individuals who consider themselves to be critical or just simply criticizing ideas, I don't think the best method is to go out like you said with the pictures or just throw it at people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it doesn't work. And let's be clear, yeah, there are a lot of sensitive people in the world, but the best approach usually to begin is to assume the best of other people and then to approach them with kindness, not just to bash them over the head. You know, like, hey.
Yeah, but let me make something clear. I'm saying that even if you're trying to be strategic, right? So I agree that you have to look at what you're trying to do. If my audience is Muslim and they are inviting me to, giving me the green light to talk about my views, going that route is not the best method, right? So I know that you agree that it shouldn't be illegal for us to draw Muhammad, for example. But I'm arguing that it might even, I'm going one step above that. I'm saying, in our point of view, and I'm trying to make that case to Muslims, and I'm saying, sorry, but this is our perspective. It might even sometimes be strategic, because you have to look at the goal. If the person that is drawing Muhammad is just trying to piss you off, then that's not a very nice person. But if we are making fun of Muhammad in our own platform, or you know, in a way that you could decide not to be exposed to it if you wanted to, that's beyond just not illegal. That's also, I think, might be, in our perspective, is required to stop the government from even considering trying to be like in the United States, to be like Europe, where some speech apparently there is like illegal, right? Like you can't deny the Holocaust in Germany, right? And here's the thing: all these free speech advocates, I don't deny the Holocaust. I think it's ridiculous for people to deny the Holocaust, but that should be legal, right? And because we didn't defend the Holocaust deniers when they made it illegal, now when they are trying to make it illegal if they try to make it illegal for people to criticize Islam, we're going to be hypocrites, right? Because where were you where these people free speech was being denied, right? So because you weren't there, now all of a sudden your free speech is being denied. You can't fight just for your speech. If you're fighting for free speech, you have to fight for everyone's free speech. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I want to say that I think the best remedy to, if you're looking to spread your ideology, okay, which I'm sure we're in agreement with that. That's why we go around talking to people, right? Is to convince them of our ideas. The best way to do so is to allow that discussion to be able to take place to begin with.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I think one of the main reasons, and one of my concerns, is that there are a lot of Muslims who are starting to apostate. And I think one of the reasons why is because they're not being exposed to different ideas or being able to have these discussions. So they're they're not. I mean, this is my own view, but they're not allowed to have these discussions. And when they address people or they go to people asking for answers, people are just saying, "Shh, be quiet," and that's problematic. I think that I like examples like Abu Hanifa, for instance, one of the first scholar, the imams of fiqh, the Hanafi madhab. There's a famous story about him debating an atheist within the caliphate, and it's like, you think back then, okay, so they had open debates between atheists and Muslims, but for some reason today it's like it's a big deal. Like, you can't even post a picture on Facebook without somebody getting telling everyone to be quiet. And it's like, come on, if you really want to show that atheism is wrong or Islam is wrong, get them into a debate and have an open discussion with people and show them who's got the stronger position. Don't sit there and cry about it. I'm sorry, am I sounding kind of mean right now?
No, you're right.
So,
by the way, we have been ignoring a lot of the questions in the live stream, which
there's a live stream? I had no idea.
Yeah, but one of the questions I'm saying actually shows that, okay, so somebody I think is criticizing me and saying okay, so moderate atheists who are tolerant of Islam you're saying some atheists are tolerant of Islam and some other atheists are bigoted. See, again, it seems like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not agreeing with Islam. I'm tolerant of Muslims. I mean, I don't know how to make this even more clear. I mean, it doesn't seem to get to people, not just Muslims, and even atheists. So every time I say we have to defend the rights of Muslims, I support as Muslims promoting Islam, a lot of people are like, what the hell? I thought you were against Islam. And yeah, Islam, not Muslims. Even on our side, we have that problem, right? So if on our side we have that problem, I can imagine how much more of a problem that would be on the Islamic side, where religion is such a big part of someone's identity, right?
Well, let's get to the bottom line here too. Let's be pragmatic about all this. Okay, you're not going to get rid of anyone. Nobody's going to get rid of anyone. The best way to get about living in, with these civilizations around us is to figure out how to tolerate each other's civilization. I mean, look, you're always going to have Islamic civilization. Okay, maybe if there's a big catastrophe, I know, Allahu Alam, you know what I mean? But I'm trying to say is that there are going to continue being billions of Muslims. Okay.
All right.
Now,
until we all become AI, I think.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So either you can continue, I mean, you can disagree with that, but you're not going to get rid of it. Okay.
No.
So the best way to go about this is to find a way in which you can disagree and have your own civilization and have a civilization over here where you're not trying to kill each other.
Right.
Okay. We can be tolerant. I mean, this has existed in the past. It is possible. It was very rare in the past, like I said, because most of past centuries were all empire. But there may be a point where we can get to that, and we don't always have to be technically at war with each other. You know what I mean? There are times where we can agree and disagree, and we can still function and sell to each other and trade and talk and have discussions. We don't always have to be worried about, oh, those numbers over there are growing and this numbers over here are growing, and they're going to overcome and or destroy us or whatever. We live in a very sensitive time period now, especially. I think it has a lot to do with being post World War II, but that's another issue. Where everyone is concerned that this group over here is going to overcome this group over here, or something of that sort. And I think that if we really want to be at peace with each other, the first thing is to be able to tolerate those differences which aren't imposed upon us. If a Muslim woman wants to wear a headscarf, get over it. Whatever. The same thing with the Muslims. If a non-Muslim person, whatever, wants to go wear something over there, that's their business. Leave them alone.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so if a Muslim woman wants to wear a hijab, they should have every right to do so, right? Mm. And if somebody wants to wear bikini, they have every right to do this as well. But I think if a Muslim woman wants to say, without forcing anybody, that bikini is haram, right?
Yeah, they can do that.
They should be able to do that, right?
Yeah, same.
and if somebody on our side wants to say, I think hijab represents men telling women what to wear, and men telling women that they are responsible for men's temptations, right? They should be able to say that, but without forcing anybody what to wear. Some people are saying I'm contradicting myself in the.
I don't know what chat is it. I'm very bad with this tech.
Yeah,
Not
I'm very
because I'm a
bad.
Muslim, but because I'm old.
No,
Okay,
you know,
so
I think what I need, what we need with live chat, because I get so. Yeah, I can send you the link, but you have to mute it when I send it to you
I really
because.
don't bother. Just tell me what's
Okay.
going on. I mean, but
No,
the thing is, like,
I actually can't follow it, but it's I think it's easier when you have multiple people because two people are talking and some person is checking the live stream. But for me, it's okay. So I'll try to respond to them on the YouTube. Hopefully, they code. Yeah.
So
But anyway,
maybe I'll do it later as well. But the whole thing, guys, I'm 32 years old. I know that's not too old, but I still don't have a smartphone. Okay, I don't care. Like, I just don't know what's going on anymore.
No, I think they're saying I'm contradicting. I think they are saying that I'm against Islam, but I'm defending Muslims, and many people see that as a contradiction, right?
That's nonsense.
And
okay,
yeah, go ahead.
Let me make a point for you. See, this has to do with identity politics that was started in the postmodernist era. It's very fascinating how people can advance these sort of beliefs that, oh, if you're against Islam, you have to be against Muslims, and vice versa. No, you don't. That's postmodernism. That's identity politics. Okay, for all of you out there, which I assume that many atheists are now opposed to postmodernism, that's really ironic. Just saying. Okay.
What? I don't know. I don't. Here's the thing. I never just the same way. I don't try to assume that what Muslims believe in, other than the few things that they just believe in Allah, Muhammad, and the Quran, which most of them haven't read, I think. But I also people don't try to assume much about atheists, because a lot of people ask me, like, aren't you atheists supposed to be this? Aren't you atheists supposed to be that? I don't really know. I just know the only atheist that I could really represent is me, right? Just like no Muslim should be asked to represent the entire Muslim community, I don't think any atheist should also be asked to represent the entire atheist community.
Well, I want to be fair to atheists here as well as you, that I think there's a little bit of a difference there, because when you're talking about Muslim, that is a positive definition of something or particular beliefs. That said, you are correct to state that not every Muslim in the world has read hadith. Like, so when people post all these hadith and stuff, half these people haven't even read them. They don't even know what you're talking about. I'm not saying myself, but a lot of Muslims out there, they haven't even read their own source text, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Well, with an atheist, when we're talking about contemporary atheism, as it is defined today as being a lack of belief in God, because that definition is actually relatively new. It started in the 70s with Anthony Flew, who, by the way, even though he did convert to deism, he was a very famous atheist for a number of years, and he actually came up with that distinction between lack of belief and belief that God does not exist. In philosophy, we call the current conception of atheism as negative atheism, or it's called weak atheism in the blog sphere or whatever. But anyways, yeah, so when you lack a belief in something, it doesn't really tell me anything about you. So it's like, oh, I lack a belief in, okay, well, that's nice. So tell me what you do believe in.
Yeah, I believe in many things, right? I believe in friendship, human rights, free speech. A lot of people, when you say I don't believe in God, they're like, oh, so you believe in nothing? You're like, actually, there's a huge list of things I believe in. That's just one thing I don't believe in, right? But I see your point. I might slightly disagree, because I have met many, many, many Muslims. I mean, I lived in Iran, right? Most of my life. And they're not much alike. Right? They are as diverse as many other people. They have their own share of nice people. They have their share of assholes. They have their share of educated, uneducated. They're very different from each other. I mean, I don't think for most of them. I mean, and this is not to. For most of them don't take. Islam is just something you don't think about much. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
those are the practice. I mean, yeah.
yeah, I mean, even the ones that pray, it's just like, first of all, in Iran is like they call it 5 times a day, but it's actually 3 times a day because they're Shia, right?
Combination. Yeah.
So those 3 times that they pray, it's just something you do and you get it over with and you just get on by your life, right? Like I think most of the time you're worried about your career, you're worried about what you're wearing and the next party, about the grade that you're gonna get, about the car that you're gonna buy, or you could afford it or you can't afford it, right? I don't think for many of them are non-practicing, but even among the ones that are practicing, I mean, when they think about Ramadan, what comes to their mind is not God and Islam and stuff. What comes to their mind is like the get together at the end of the night and eating together as family, you know what I mean, or getting up early in the morning and preparing the food. Those, is we had the Quran in our home, and my grandma and my aunt were more religious than my parents, but they never opened it. They kiss it, they put it on their head, they put it at the Nowruz sofra at every New Year. They put it in front of you at the weddings. But they never open it.
I
Right?
think it's going a little bit far here, though.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be, I think, a little bit more concise here. Is that whatever like the people in the chat, I don't know what they're saying exactly, but your conception of what you think Islam is does not necessitate that is what the Muslims you're talking to think Islam is.
Right.
That's the bottom line there. The idea that somehow the concept that you're criticizing may not even be the one that certain people hold. So to even combine them, to suggest that your conception of Islam is what those Muslims are over there, is naive. Same way as your conception of atheism, or anybody else's conception of atheism, is that particular atheist that you're about to approach. So that is just fallacious in and of itself.
Can you clarify that? I want to just make sure I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm just saying that the conception that you may have of a particular ideology or label does not necessitate that the people that you're talking to who claim to be representative of that label or
right.
Is that's their conception of it. So when like, I'm sure there are many atheists in your chat, no offense, who think that ISIS is the representation of Islam, or that is what Islam is. Okay, well, there are many Muslims in the world who do not hold that conception. So to say that they are combined, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Because they may not even have that version. I mean, let me give you here's a funny example. North Korea thinks that they're a democracy.
Yeah.
Okay, just because they go around calling themselves a democracy, does not mean anything in and of itself.
Right.
And somebody goes around, well, my country's a democracy, does not mean anything.
Right.
What people conceive of themselves can sometimes be wrong.
But yeah, I mean, okay, to make your point in a different way, let's say I say that ISIS is the closest representation of Islam that we have today, right? Or even if I say one step back, even if it's not fully Islamic, it is Islamic, right? Like even if it's not to the letter Islamic, it's Islamic. Let's say that, or say no, it's complete. If Muhammad was here, he would be like, yes, ISIS, that's my Islam, right? So even if I say that, you have to understand that just because somebody is a Muslim, that doesn't mean they believe that they are following Islam. The fact that they disagree with you doesn't mean that you should basically put them in the same category as ISIS, right? You should be happy that even though you might disagree on the fact that what Islam stands for, right? That's such a small, minor issue compared to the fact that both of you are not for killing people that are both of you are not for slavery. Both of you are not for raping Yazidi women, right? That's a more important thing to highlight than the fact that I think that ISIS is true Islam and you think ISIS is not true Islam, right?
Well,
we have more agreements here than disagreements, right?
Pragmatically, that's more important. But when we're talking about, sorry, I apologize. Let me interrupt.
No. I think I contradicted myself a little bit here, but go on.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's the case. But what I want to say is that, okay, let's say I do disagree any conception that ISIS is representative of true Islam or the closest thing that we have. However, the point I think that you brought and that I brought earlier still stands. That even the disagreement itself is actually evidence that the whole idea that you could combine the two, Muslims and Islam, or your conception of Islam, doesn't work. Like I said, it's very arbitrary. It's very petulant. It's very simplistic thinking. And anybody who says that, for you to be against a particular conception or what you consider to be the valid conception of a particular ideology, therefore makes you against a group of people who disagree with you. That logically doesn't even make any sense. That's just nonsense. It just doesn't. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, you should be happy that they don't agree with you, because or else all would be ISIS.
I'm sure there's some people in your chat going Takia, Takia. I'm like, well, when am I lying? When it's convenient for you?
Yeah.
So what?
No. I think what people and some people that think they're on my side, what they say is that if you're a Muslim, you believe in the Quran.
Okay.
And if you believe in the Quran, as Armin says, the Quran says horrible things like this. So Armin, you are saying that you are supporting people that believe in the book that is advocating for violence. And I tell them, like, well, I think it's advocating for violence, but they don't.
Yeah,
right?
It's non sequitur. It doesn't mean that they think like you.
Yeah. So they believe that they believe in a book that doesn't advocate for violence, even though I disagree with them on that.
Yeah.
They are not advocating for violence.
Exactly.
Right? So it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy.
Very simple, but but you have to understand. I think that a lot of the people who are disagreeing with you understand this point, and I'm going to be frank. I think that they're purposefully arguing because they want to combine the two, and I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah, I think you might be. I think hatred is a very powerful force, and it's easier to take advantage of it, and it's harder to be a force for people, bringing people together. It's easier to be like, oh, those motherfuckers, and like, yeah, those motherfuckers, like that, right? That's people. It's a stronger rallying cry, right? But we need to try because we're fucked if we because
no. It typically is a response I call the troglodyte hordes. By people who cannot intellectualize things, who cannot think critically. It's easier to attack a physical manifestation of an idea rather than the ideas themselves. So it's much easier to hate because it takes less intellectual power to do so. It's just like it's just easier not to think about it. That guy's a Muslim, let's kill him. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, people are pointing out, but those Muslims that think that the Quran is peaceful, but they're wrong. They're making like logical fallacies and stuff. I'm like, yes, that might be our disagreement with them, okay? But we have to understand that because that's our disagreement, that means that our disagreements with them is not on the point of the violence is good or violence is bad part, right? Like that's a minor disagreement on. Okay, yes, they're like, oh well, they're idiots. It says in the Quran that you should beat your wife, and they disagree with it. So how could they not see that it actually says you should beat your wife? Like, okay, yes, say that they're reading that wrong, but if they say that they're not for beating your wife, that means they're not for beating your wife. Criticize them for not understanding the Quran maybe properly, if that's your argument, right? But don't say, but therefore all of them are okay with beating their wives. You know what I mean?
What's ironic is that when they said like you're enacting kind of what they're thinking or saying right now in the chat. I can't see it, but it's like guys, I think the same way about you. So it's like, but I don't want to kill you or anything. So relax. I don't think that your whatever perception.
Let me turn this around, right? Let me turn this around like on Muslim, on atheist, right? You can say, like, for example, let's say a Muslim says, atheism, if you don't believe in God, life would be meaningless.
That's a little bit more abstract. I think you should.
I'm just saying, therefore, for all atheists, life is meaningless, right? I'm an atheist, but I don't think life is meaningless. You're like, yes, but and he says like, well, no, but if you think about it logically, it should be meaningless. But
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's what you think, but I don't see it as meaningless. Then he can't come and say, no, you also think life is meaningless.
You're lying.
Like, you're lying. I'm like, no,
So-
I'm coming to a different conclusion that
No,
atheism gets to. Right.
I'm gonna give it an olive branch here. You know, I could just be wrong. I could be confused.
Right.
I could have some sort of cognitive dissonance. You know, it could be a lot of things. Likewise with you. It doesn't mean that I'm just sitting here, you know, lying about. I don't have time for that. Okay, I'd rather be drinking coffee than lying to you. Just leave me alone. Okay, like I don't have time to convince you about this stuff.
Yeah, we don't have this secret agenda like, oh, we know atheism is going to make everybody suicidal, but we're going to lie to people what it is. Or like, oh, Islam is for violence, but I'm lying to people about it so that one day we could like stab everybody back.
I don't have time to do that. I got more important things to do. Worry about you guys like that.
I think I may be naive for thinking this. I think on average people are nice. More people are nice. I just think not nice people are louder, right?
Well, they have to be because nobody wants to listen to them.
But I think they get away with everything because they are more active. They're louder. They go out and vote. They rally, and you know, I think people that are not so hateful, they need to get their act together. I understand that they have other things to worry about. They have their more important things they might think they worry about. But hateful people are going to steal this planet if other people don't come and provide an alternative way of debating things. And the best way to stop people from fighting with fists and bullets is to fight with words. And the more we do that, the more we're basically removing them from the arena. I
think that unfortunately both, if we're talking just in the context of Western and Islamic civilization, right now we're at a point where it's very difficult to do so given the fact that both sides have indiscriminately hurt the other one physically. And I think it's not easy when you live in that context.
Right.
So we have to figure out, how to reverse that.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it won't happen anytime soon.
Right. One person is saying, I'm doing taqiyya. I think he's joking because that. But he's saying.
How do you know I'm doing taqiyya? What if I'm doing taqiyya with my taqiyya? What are you going to do now? Huh? You're done now. You can't figure that one out, can you?
And another thing, when he's also asking, what if they don't listen? Here's the thing. They don't have to. We win, me and you win, not just if you get some atheist to be a Muslim or if I get some Muslim to be an atheist. Me and you win if you get an atheist that hates Muslims to still disagree with Islam but not hate all Muslims. And I win if I get a Muslim that thinks atheists are demons or ridiculous, immoral people to feel like, okay, no, just because you're an atheist, it doesn't mean that you're less, or I see why somebody would be an atheist, even if they don't. So, and you can do that. The person is asking me, what if they don't listen? You can do that by not just by trying to convince people, but by just listening to people and talking to them. And even if you don't convince them to change their views, you have come together, and if you demonstrate that, that's enough. That's a win.
I just find it fascinating. I like that question. What if they don't listen? What if they don't listen? Get a tissue.
No.
Whatever. What are you going to do? I mean, what? I got to get the hammer next, come on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, the thing, the point is that you already achieved your goal the moment you started discussion. Because the more we talk, the less we're fighting each other personally, right? And the more dialect we have, the more we're going to understand each other. So if somebody is listening to you without each other fighting personally, you have already won. So, and if you could record that like we are and demonstrate that to more people, that is possible. Because here's the thing, you know what I'm going to do with this video?
Okay.
And similar other videos? Because a lot of times I say like, no, we people that are saying that, why are you not against Muslims? I like, because I'm not against people, and we need to talk to them. And people are like, well, good luck with that. no Muslim would ever have a friendly conversation with you. Oh, they're gonna kill you or something before they talk to you, right? Then what I'm gonna be like, no, look, here's an example. And then I send them another link. And like, here's another example. Here's another example. And I have these as like trophies. As like people, whenever people say that, oh, Muslims are never going to talk to you, are like, you're wrong. There you go. Here's
guys, call off the ninjas. Armin is good. Like, wait, I mean, what were you saying? So, no, look, here's the bottom line. I don't care, as a Muslim myself, as far as my ethics are concerned, and what I consider to be Islamic. If I saw Armin on the street and somebody was harassing you or trying to beat you up or something, I would come to your aid. I don't question whether or not your beliefs in that respect. I see something unjust and I'll do something about it. In the same way, I think that it can be done for other people as well. I have no issue with you. I understand you disagree. And the thing is, we can flesh that out. And I think that we can have heated discussions even, without having to, harm each other in any way, shape, or form. Now, of course, the moment that somebody like in your chat decides to come up and rip the hijab off of my wife, I'm probably going to kill them. But figuratively speaking, just enough to send you to the hospital.
Call the cops.
Well, yeah, in that situation, a fist is going to fly. But, the moment that, if you say something about my religion, I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't got an issue. And I think most Muslims are like that, to be honest, to be frank. Yeah. I think that it's being way too sensationalized. Look, I'm going to be frank with you here about this too. And I hope you can disagree with me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But, the whole thing with like apostasy cases that are happening and atheists being persecuted, stuff like this. Look, I think that's being over-sensationalized too. Over-sensationalized as well to a great extent. If you walk into Los Angeles, you probably have a higher likelier chance of being killed for wearing the wrong color clothing, and similarly, I think that there are certain places in the world where Muslims are.
Are you talking about like Iran or Saudi Arabia?
No, I'm talking about like, for instance, Malaysia. I think it's being over sensationalized right now, that whole situation. Yeah, the politician opened his mouth. They open their mouths all the time, but rarely anything, if ever, anything happens there.
I think my reaction would be the same if somebody said we're gonna hunt down Muslims, if it was in a country, or if we're gonna hunt down Christians.
Yeah,
I think that would. I think that it's getting less of a reaction compared to. I mean, for example, let's say Trump comes out. Okay, so Trump did come out and said like something less. He said something less, but he said like we're gonna ban entry from all Muslims into the United States, right?
Yeah.
I think the reaction to that was huge, right?
Yeah.
It was covered. I think, what if he said something else? What if Trump said, we're going to hunt down Muslims in the United States? Don't you think that would justify a huge reaction, even if he didn't end up doing it?
I think it would justify a reaction, but not the sentiment that somehow there are people walking around with pitchforks hunting down. That's
not the sentiment. Our sentiment, that our message is that you don't get to fucking say that shit. And the thing is that the reaction needs to be, first of all, there are people that are, these people, okay, it's not like Saudi Arabia. None of these people are going to become like executed by the government, right?
No.
But Malaysia was supposed to be beyond this by now, right? Malaysia is a country, these people could lose their jobs, right? These people don't know, a lot of them, what's going to be happening to them. So they're kind of like, what's going to happen? And a lot of them are like, I don't know. So they're scared about seeing what's going to happen. And that's not okay. The thing is that we can't just fight for people's rights in places that, progress hasn't been made at all. We should also hold our lines where progress has been made. You know what I mean? So yes, we should fight for atheists in Saudi Arabia and Bangladesh and Pakistan, which the situation is much worse. But if a country has gone to a point where that's not an issue, when somebody even wants to take an inch from the progress that we made, we need to make sure, like, whoa, no, you don't get to do that, because if you get to do that in Malaysia, what hope do we have in Saudi Arabia, right? I don't think anybody said that, oh, they're lining up atheists and executing them. We just repeated what the minister said. We're going to hunt down atheists, and that should not be okay in a country, in a first world country like Malaysia. Well, I don't know. I was there. It seemed pretty first world.
Yeah, they're developing. They've only had independence for about 50-something years. So
all right. Well, as an advanced country like Malaysia, that should not be okay to say. And I think the reaction would have probably been larger if it was any other minority group. And not that that's not okay. It should be large, right? If that minister said we're going to hunt down Muslims, which he would never say, but in another country that would be more likely, the world should have a huge reaction to that. Don't you agree? Like, if Trump, even if he didn't act on it, even if we know that he bullshits a lot, he keeps bluffing, and he all of a sudden comes and says, we're going to hunt down Muslims, and we know the Constitution is not going to let him do that, right? We know he's not going to be able to do that.
I have no problem with any sort of reaction to those things. I think that it just, in my experience, I've had to deal with a lot of individuals who come on my page, etc., and insisting that, they're not Malaysians. Like, for instance, like in Malaysia, like, they're not Malaysians, they're atheists, or the moment they step off the plane, somebody's going to, I've literally heard comments like that. Somebody's going to step off the plane, grab them, and put them in a jail because, they're atheists or something. And it tends to get sensationalized to that degree. So I'm not disagreeing with you in that respect, but I do get these opinions.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, this is the case though in Iran. Right? Like, if I go to Iran right now, I'm not going to make it past the airport. I'm going to go straight from the airport to Evin prison, and they're going to give me my execution date. And I haven't heard a single person in my whole life. And I know that's going to be the case. By the way, somebody in the comments is saying, Beach Price is saying, as far as grabbing headscarves, don't touch a woman unless she wants you to. Don't care which religious outfit the woman is wearing. All right, so that's good.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Like, she's, my wife. I gave that example. I don't mind being violent in that case. So you touch my wife, you're going down. Like, that's it.
Well, that's what happened in Reza Shah's time. Did you know that? In Iran.
Where they were ripping.
Yep, they made hijab. Reza Shah in Iran, the first Pahlavi Shah, he made hijab illegal.
Yeah, and it happened in Turkey as well.
In Iran, in the Shia country, he made hijab illegal. Yeah. And women weren't. I don't know if he went as aggressive as Reza Shah. He made it illegal to wear a hijab, or he would just made it. I think he just made it illegal in universities and.
Ataturk. Preliminarily, the Young Turks initially made it illegal across the board. It got more lax as time went on.
Right.
But yeah, the Young Turks were pretty bad.
And now we have the exact opposite in Iran, which made it illegal not to have a hijab.
Yeah, well, that's the reaction you get. So.
Yeah, but it's not okay. You agree that it's not okay, right?
Yeah, it's not great to force anybody for anything.
Yeah. Anyways, I think this was a great chat. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Are we done?
Well, it's been I think nobody's gonna watch it if we go on 2 hours. We should do more though. Sure. Do you agree we should do more? I picked the first up, but you have to pick the second.
That's my turn. Okay.
Yeah.
It's your show, boy.
All right.
Your show, my friend.
Before we end this, how can people follow your work and find you on Twitter or wherever, or go to your, like, what if people want to see more of your opinions? How can they find you?
Sure. I'm at Yaqeen Institute, so you can go to yaqeeninstitute.com. You can find my work on there as well. You can also go to my website, asadullahali.com, or you can go on my Facebook page, and you can find all my stuff on there. And
Twitter as well?
I don't really use Twitter that much. I don't like having to be limited to 140 characters or something.
You could post a link to your article. There you go.
Yeah. So I usually use it for like links and stuff, but I can't stand Twitter.
Well, send me all the links. I'll put it in the description of the YouTube video. So for anybody interested to come and find you.
Appreciate it, and I hope that I hope we get to have another discussion in the future, and I hope that you're well.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.